Alright, so to solve this problem, the first thing you want to do is isolate the square root, which means that this positive 4 that's sitting here needs to be moved to the other side of the equation. So first thing we'll do here is we will subtract the 4 from both sides. So what that'll get us is the square root of x minus 2 is equal to x minus 4. Alright, and now we have the square root symbol isolated on the left-hand side, so it is now time to get rid of that. And how we get rid of a square root is to square both sides of the equation, because the square root and squared they're actually inverse functions. So if I take this whole thing to the second power, and I take this whole thing to the second power, right, I can square both sides of the equation. I just have to make sure and ensure that I'm doing that to both sides. So from here, the square root and the squared on the left-hand side cancel out, so we just have an x minus 2. And then on the right-hand side, this would be a box method, right? It's a binomial squared. So in order to simplify or to expand this side, we have to do a box, where both sides are x minus 4. Alright, so x times x is x squared, negative 4 times x is negative 4x, negative 4x, and then negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So this right-hand side is now x squared, and then I'm going to combine the like terms here. So let's see, these are like terms, so I'm going to combine those together. They become a negative 8x, and then we have that plus 16. Alright, and once you get here, this is what we call a quadratic equation. Alright, and there are a bunch of different ways you can solve a quadratic equation. There is graphing, which is probably not the best way to use. There's factoring, there's completing the square, and there's the quadratic formula. Okay, so this goes back a while. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to factor, which means move everything to the same side. Alright, so since most of it's already on the right-hand side, I'm just going to move everything to the right-hand side. So that means that I'm going to take this x, I'm going to subtract it from both sides, and I'm going to add this 2 to both sides. Alright, so I'm just moving the x and the negative 2 to the other side. So what I have on the left-hand side is 0, and what I have on the right-hand side is an x squared, and this negative 8x and this negative x, they combine together to be a negative 9x, and the 16 and the positive 2 combine together to be a positive 18. Alright, so then from here, we're going to go ahead and try to factor the right-hand side. So we're going to look for factors of 18 that multiply to negative 9. Okay? And so you should be able to come up with that's negative 6 and negative 3. So negative 6 times negative 3 is 18, and negative 6 plus negative 3 is negative 9. So that would mean that my factors are negative 6 and negative 3. So that means this factors into x minus 6 and x minus 3. And then our last step in solving a quadratic equation by factoring is, now that we have it factored, we're just looking for the numbers that make each factor equal to 0. So we would go from this step, and we would say, well, that first factor could be 0, so x minus 6 is equal to 0. That's one answer. Or we could have the other factor be 0, x minus 3 is equal to 0. And those are where your two answers are going to come from. So to solve this one, we just have to add 6 to both sides. So we would get that x is equal to positive 6, that's one answer. And then right here, we would have to add a 3 to both sides. And we would have x equals positive 3. Alright, so the next thing to do is to check your answer, okay? And this is probably one of the most important steps for a couple reasons, and you'll see in a second. So let's take this x equals 6. Actually, let's just copy this down on the next page. Here, let's x minus 2 plus 4 equals x. So this was the equation, and we had two answers. We had x was 6, and we had x is 3. So I'm going to check both of these. So I'll check x is 6 first. So I have the square root of 6 minus 2 plus 4 equals 6. All right, the square root of 6 minus 2, this is 4. Okay, the square root of 4 is 2. And 2 plus 4 is 6. Okay, so that one checks. That one's okay. So we know at least this one's good. So let's check x equals 3. So we get 3 minus 2 plus 4 equals 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. M squared 1 is 1. And 1 plus 4 is 5. So that one does not work. So that means that x equals 3 is not an answer. So that means that x equals 6 would be our only answer. That's our final answer.